Have you ever had a memory that just stopped you in your tracks? A memory that you hadn't thought about for years. And when you stepped into that memory, you could smell, you could feel where you were and who you were with. Or maybe you see number patterns over and over. Well, today we're going to be talking about signs that your spirit guides and your loved ones are around you. We're going to be diving into the different ways that they show themselves, even if you haven't been regularly communicating with them through your daily meetings. Now, if you're listening and you're a student of mine, you know I recommend consistent meetings with your guides, but they'll still show you that they are around. So we'll talk about the different ways loved ones come through and when guides are trying to show their support to you and get your attention. Stay tuned. Welcome to Spiritual and Ambitious. I'm your host, Whitney McNeill. I'm a certified medium and spiritual teacher, and I help spiritual and ambitious souls just like you live your life purpose through your career and attract abundance by connecting into your intuition and spirit guides. Let's get spiritual and ambitious. Now, before we get started, I want to invite you to a fun little giveaway that I'm having over on Instagram. So all you have to do is go to my Instagram and follow me, and then comment on the latest post so I can learn a little bit more about you. And then I'd just love for you to DM me and say hi. So you can find me over at Instagram.com/messenger of spirit. Messenger of Spirit's my handle. Follow me, comment on the latest post, and DM me and say hi, and you'll be entered to win a free reading with me. And so we're going to be doing this thing that we did last month. It was super fun. And whoever wins gets to ask me a question, and I'll do a 3-card pull. But you know, I love to delight and surprise, so I end up pulling a little bit more than 3 cards. And I send this to you on a little video. So I don't do readings anymore, but this is a way to get one. So I'd love to connect with you there. I also want to give a shout out to Turtle J11. Turtle J says, I'm pretty sure my spirit guides put your podcast in front of me through a friend's Facebook post at exactly the right time. I enjoy the easy to understand, straightforward, relatable teachings of each episode. I've listened to them all several times to soak it all in. Thanks. Thank you so much for that. I love that. And how your spirit guides said, hey, hello, you need to be listening to this right now. And of course, we're going to be talking about your spirit guides. So you know those times when we feel a little bit off our game, like, I haven't been regularly connecting to my guides, or I feel like I'm not getting consistent messages, and maybe you've not taken my 4 Intuitive Languages program and you don't know how to get started, or maybe you have taken it and you're like, life is taken over. I'm just not talking to them. Well, your spirit guides are still wanting to develop a relationship, and they're still there. They've not abandoned you. And your loved ones in spirit come around too. Now, your spirit guides are there more on the regular. So they are your day in and day out kind of helpers. They're there to really help create opportunities for you. And they are also there to protect you. They're there to teach you and to guide you. And then your loved ones in spirit are not there regularly. And they have other things that they need to do. If they were to hang out with you all the time, they would be really not doing themselves a favor, because they are in spirit and they need to get used to that. If they are hanging around the earth plane a bit too much, then that's not necessarily progress. So sometimes we think we want our loved ones to be around us all the time, but we need a little bit of space to adjust to the new normal after they transition. But also, they can still come in, let's say, on a regular basis, but not every day. So this is one of the reasons why our loved ones can't really be our spirit guides. And our spirit guides are people, let's say, or energies that 90% of the time have lived an earth plane life before, maybe even 99% of the time. Now, your loved ones usually come around on celebration days, birthdays, anniversaries, or if you're really calling on them and you want to talk with them. Now, there are reasons why they can't show up, and I can get into that in another episode. But for now, just knowing that they do like to still be a part of our lives. So I think understanding the differences about if they're there and like when they might be there can be really helpful. So let's just say that you are at work and you are busy focusing on a project. And all of a sudden, you start thinking about a loved one in spirit that has passed, seemingly out of the blue. Or maybe you have a client who starts talking about their loved one, and it begins to bring up some memories of your loved one in spirit. Is that by happenstance? No, it's synchronicity. Your spirit guides led you to that person, and with that, open you up a little bit more and understanding how your loved one is around you and wanting to visit with you. So when you have those seemingly random thoughts about a loved one in spirit, well, they're there. They're wanting you to communicate with them. Usually when a thought pops into our mind and we are doing something else, it's considered an invitation. Hey, I'm here. Would you like to talk to me? And one of the things I will recommend is, well, one, if you're not doing anything, you can just talk with them. But I really recommend scheduling a time or a meeting. So for me, when this has happened, I've said, oh yeah, sure, I would love to talk to my loved one, but I'll say later on in the day, or how about around 3:00 or right after lunch, something like that, so that I can prepare myself for that meeting or that conversation or that experience. Because even if your loved one has been in the spirit world for years, actually feeling and sensing or knowing their presence can really bring up tears out of the blue. I mean, we're human, right? So understanding it's more of an invitation when you have this random thought about them. But what about memories? Oh my goodness. Have you ever had one of those memories where you could just feel the breeze on your skin and you could smell everything in the house and you could maybe even taste what lunch you were eating if that's in a memory? Well, when you have those kind of sensations, when you have those kind of feelings, then normally your spirit is right there. And that in itself is more of the meeting, is what I would say. So a thought can be like an invitation. Hey, I'm around. You want to talk? A memory is more of a visitation of I'm here. I'm kind of transporting you back in time. And normally these memories bring up emotion where we're laughing. We look at this memory fondly and it's so strong. And we'll often say, oh my gosh, I forgot that I even did this. We'll even say, I haven't even thought about this person or this memory for years. Where did this come from? Well, now you know where it came from. It's a loved one in spirit, just reminding you and wanting to really have a conversation with you. So when you have those senses, you could just take a moment and say, thank you for being here, or I really appreciate our visit today. You can also talk to them and ask them for any messages that they want to share. Now, if you've studied with me before, you know that I always recommend to communicate with your loved ones who've passed over through your spirit guides, because your spirit guides know your energy system and your loved ones don't. So you'll actually be able to communicate more clearly when you go through your guides than going straight direct to your loved one who's passed. Think of your spirit guides as translators to facilitate the conversation. Now, even if it's not a memory, oftentimes it comes in this other way. So you're sitting there minding your own business, or maybe you're having a conversation with your guides and you're asking about your loved one and how they are. And all of a sudden you smell something. You're like, what is that smell? That smells so familiar. I just can't place how I recognize it, but where's it coming from and what is it? And then we have this aha moment. It smells like my grandmother's house, or it smells like my mom's house. Or, oh my gosh, that smells like a perfume I used to know. Oh my gosh, I know who used to wear that perfume or cologne or etc. Now, this can happen with spirit guides too. I used to have a guide that smelled like sage. If you've ever burned white sage to cleanse your house, that is exactly what I would smell. And it was so wild. I'd be sitting at a restaurant smelling sage, and I'd have to ask whoever was with me, do you smell that? I remember that really clearly. I was sitting with my mentor years ago eating dinner somewhere, and I would go smell, sniff, like, what is that? What is that? And I said, do you smell that sage? No. Okay. And it would happen over and over. I would be in a public area with people. Do you smell that? Nope. So this can be a sign that your spirit guide is around, or guides, and your loved one or loved ones are around too. And it's so wild because it's very validating. You can't place where in the world it came from. And what's really validating is when you ask other people, do you smell that? And they're like, no. You're thinking, this is definitely from spirit. If your loved one or your spirit guide's really trying to get your attention and you feel like you've been getting crickets when you've been trying to communicate with them, a lot of times they'll use the smell and the taste because it comes out of nowhere. And you're like, what is this? I had a friend who would smell cigarette smoke around her quite a bit, and it was a loved one that was there every time. So just knowing that your loved ones and your guides can come through smell. Now they can also come through taste. So we're sitting there and all of a sudden it's like, I'm tasting blueberry muffins. What in the heck? Now I've got this craving. And you know what? I've got this craving for those blueberry muffins that so-and-so used to make. Oh my gosh, that recipe was so good. Wonder if I can recreate it. We kind of get obsessed over whatever it is that we're tasting all of a sudden. And we think about our loved one who's passed. Now you can actually get messages through taste and smell in your meetings with your guides. And when I used to give readings, I would get these sensations in my mouth sometimes if somebody was going to have dental work, like, tasting metal in my mouth kind of thing. However, your spirit guides will often give you these messages too if they want you to consider eating different foods, like, hey, we think you need a little bit more fresh vegetables in your life. Then you might start tasting that vegetable or craving it as well. So they can give us messages that way too. One of the weirdest scenarios I've ever had was years ago, and I was with a group of women and we were meeting every week for spiritual topics. And one night we were in a circle where we were trying to communicate with one of the women's loved one who was in spirit. And at that time in my life, I was doing readings. So primarily I would see, I would hear, I would feel or know the messages, the four intuitive languages. But I had nothing, right? Nothing came up, but all of us were open to see if we could give a message to this woman. And all of a sudden I tasted this weird, kind of disgusting, if I'm honest, flavor that was a mixture of like tang, iced tea, and some sort of soda. And I was kind of smacking my lips like, oh, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm tasting like this weird concoction. And I described it. And she said, oh my gosh, that was what he called like his potion. He made his special drink and it was a mixture of those three flavors. And that is definitely 100% validating, right? There is no way that I would ever be able to make that up. So knowing that loved ones can come in with something really strong, if they had like the signature recipe, or in this case, the signature drink that he made, which I do not recommend. Now, of course, they can still come through and let you know of their presence through seeing them, hearing them, feeling them, or knowing that they're there. So the other day when I was making chili and I heard my grandmother, I would hear what she said to me in her special tone and her cadence. Last night, my husband and I were talking, and my husband heard my dog, who has transitioned into spirit, like do his little huffing, sneezy thing. Whenever he wanted our attention or he was irritated because we weren't listening to him, he would kind of blow out of his nose. If you're a dog owner, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And it was around dinner time. And so he would get hungry right around dinner time. And if we weren't ready to feed him, he would show his distaste by huffing at us. And Chris stopped in his tracks and said, "Oh, I just heard Ranger huff." Like, he's like, "I'm ready for dinner." So they can definitely make themselves known that they're there. Now, I will talk about your animals in spirit in a different episode because it's a little different than your loved ones who are human in spirit. So with that, knowing there are animals in spirit may choose to be around us a lot more regularly than our humans. So with that being said, I'm going to talk about number patterns and other ways to know that your spirit guides and your loved ones are around after this quick break. This episode is sponsored by my free Spirit Guide Masterclass. Inside, you'll learn the 5 C's of spirit guide communication, your role with your spirit guides, 2 proven effective strategies to stop second guessing yourself and your intuition, and the single most important step to understand your intuitive guidance, along with 4 ways to perceive your spiritual intuitive messages. You'll also be getting a workbook to go through this class as well. You can join at messengerofspirit.com/free class.
Here I am, a family-friendly hotel looking for a week of fun for all ages. Must enjoy fabulous on-site water parks and personal space in the form of separate but adjoining rooms. I mean, where else can you find a one-of-a-kind personality with an enormous lobby aquarium and a concierge who can recite all the fishes' names by heart?
Alan, Bertie, Coral, Squirt, Flip.
Download the Hotels app to find me, your perfect somewhere.
Time for a real estate reality check from me, a Century 21 affiliated agent. Closing isn't always champagne and celebrations. Buyers can back out and contracts can fall through at the last moment. That's why you work with us. The Century 21 brand is the most respected in the industry. We've got the tools and the know-how to help you make a sale worth celebrating. At the right time, of course. Century 21. Move fearlessly. Each office is independently owned and operated. Century 21 is a registered trademark owned by Century 21 Real Estate, LLC.
All right, we're back. Thanks for listening. And yes, if you've not taken the Spirit Guide Masterclass, I 100% recommend it, and you can find it in the show notes. So far, we've talked about thinking of them, having memories of them. We can hear them, we can see them, we can feel them, we can know them, and we can now smell things and taste things. But number patterns, what in the heck are those? I could probably have an entire episode on spirit number patterns, but it is something that we commonly see when we start really opening our intuition and we start moving towards our spiritual journey. Oftentimes, these number patterns can change or they can stay with you for years. And let me just break it down really quick. What I'm talking about is every time you look at the phone, it happens to be the same number pattern, or you see the number pattern, let's say on your gas ticket, your receipt is, let's say 444 or 235, whatever your number pattern is. Or you go to a restaurant and your total is 4444, that kind of stuff, where you can't make it up. Now, if you're sitting there expecting a number pattern and you're like constantly looking at your phone, no, that's not what I'm getting at. What happens is your spirit guides or your loved one inspires you to look at your phone at that time, or to glance at the TV at that time, or to be at the restaurant at this time. So they inspire you through your intuition, and a lot of times you don't even know. So it's more like that channeler intuitive language where you're just naturally looking at something and it's there, and it's like over and over and over. So with these number patterns, they can mean different things for different people. So if you're a numerology buff, did I even say that right? Numerology buff. That sounds weird when I say it, but you get what I'm talking about. Then numbers might have a special meaning for you, or you might just take it at face value and say, I'm getting 222, I'm getting 444. Yep. I know that my guides are around. So you can take it with, I see this number pattern and I know that every time I see it, my spirit guides are around. Or you can say, hey, what does this number pattern mean? And so if you're someone that loves numerology, you can kind of look at it and say, all right, this is what twos mean, or I'm going to add these up and this is what this total number means. So for me, what I can tell you is when you get that number pattern, know that it's your loved one or your spirit guide. And one of the things I'll encourage you to do is to ask, hey, first of all, actually say thank you. And then you can ask, hey, thanks. Can you give me more information? Does this mean you're around? Or is this my spirit guide or my loved one? You'll notice that the number patterns change. And when the numbers start to change, there's usually a different meaning in each number set. So for me, I have a number pattern that's been with me for years of 911. Freaky, right? For those of you that live in the US, we're like, oh my gosh, are they trying to tell me it's an emergency? In my case, no. But I will tell you, when I saw it over and over, I thought, oh, what? It's 911. You must be trying to get a message to me right now and I'm not listening. Or, oh my gosh, is everybody okay that's around me? When I started to understand that it wasn't like an emergency 911, Whitney, stop and listen. It was more of a, this is your number pattern. This is what 911 means to you. Knowing that as that happens, I can understand that it's more of the numerology and what it means there. Now, let's say that your loved one unfortunately passed in 9/11, which is just horrible if that happened. But knowing that if you saw that number pattern, that could be a representation that your loved one in spirit is there. Now, I've also seen these number patterns too with a birthday of a loved one or a passing, like an anniversary of when that person transitioned into spirit over and over. So if you see that that number pattern has a specific meaning to you, then normally your loved ones are kind of telling you, hey, I'm here. Your spirit guides tend to give you number patterns that repeat. Not always, but a number pattern that repeats. So like for me, 9/11 is from my spirit guides, but that's not a repeating pattern other than the 11. Normally people see 1111, 222, 444. Right now I'm seeing a lot of 444 in addition to 9/11. And you know what's really cool? As I'm recording this, I'm looking at my computer screen and I've recorded videos. I have a video on my desktop and it's DSC_0044. So see? Just looking, and I mean, you can't plan that stuff, right? And now I don't know how organized you are. I am super unorganized on my desktop. So I have like a zillion things on my desktop. My husband, by the way, hates it. He's a super organized, clean person, probably because he was in the army years ago. So I could be looking at my desktop and see actually a zillion things, and they're really tiny because it's far away, but that's what caught my eye. So just giving you a heads up of, this is a sign, like your spirit guides are here. Oftentimes too, if you're in a situation where you're really upset or you really need support, oftentimes you could ask them to see a number pattern too. So I actually recorded this podcast episode. And then after the episode and talking about number patterns, I looked and saw this is episode 22. Oh my goodness. I did not plan that, but that is definitely from spirit. So before we moved on, hey, this is episode 22. Now, here's another one. If you hear a name that pops up over and over and over, now this can mean a lot of things, but for today's episode, let's say that you've got Ben, Ben, you're watching a TV show. Ben, you're watching another TV show. Ben, you're watching another TV show. Ben, and over and over and over. And as this happens, knowing, okay, let me just ask my guides, like, okay, is one of your names Ben? And then see what you're getting. So if you've been asking, especially, can you give me your name? Then letting you know that they're there. They're giving you their name. But this can also be for a loved one in spirit too. Now, they can also give you messages this way, which is really kind of cool. So I have a friend that has a connective tissue disease, and she was kind of questioning between a couple different things. And I was watching a TV show and people were saying connective tissue. And then I was meeting with my book proposal coach. I'm writing a book proposal. And she said, so-and-so and so it's like the connective tissue. And I was like, interesting that you chose that phrase. And then a third time I heard the word connective tissue on a TV show, totally separate again. And I thought, all right, so that's a message there. So just knowing that your spirit guides and your loved ones can communicate over and over in that way. And the last way that I'm going to talk about today on the episode, I know I could go on and on about this, dreams. This is the easiest way I think that we've all kind of understood. Oh, I keep dreaming about so-and-so. I have a friend who we were best friends in high school, and her mom was kind of like a second mom to me. And she passed over into spirit a couple years ago. I will have dreams about her, even though I don't feel like I can actually connect with her when I'm having meetings, but we will be in dreams together. And so sometimes I'll deliver a message to my friend about her mom, but your loved ones can come visit you in dreams too. So oftentimes I'm visiting with my animals who've passed into spirit in the dream world. And you may get those visitations from loved ones that are in dreams, so they can come through that way. And your spirit guides can come through too. Now, I know if you're out there, you might be wondering, well, I have a repeating dream over and over. That's not what I'm talking about. When we have a repeating dream, that's more of you're processing something. I'm talking about those visitation kind of dreams. So pay attention to your dreams because they can be signs that they're around and ready to chat with you. All right, that is the end of the episode, but I'll be back next week with a new one. And until then, here's to staying spiritual and ambitious. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. And if you loved it, would you please share it with a friend? I would also love your review. And a reminder to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find me at messengerofspirit.com, and you can take the 4 Intuitive Languages quiz and find show notes there too. If you want to connect on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, you can find me at Messenger of Spirit. If you want to continue the conversation, join my free Facebook group at messengerofspirit.com/group. I'll meet you right here next week. Here's to staying spiritual and ambitious.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.